Welcome into the Tour Coach, everybody. I'm your host, Tony Ruggiero, as I am every week here on the Tour Coach podcast. If you've been listening for a while or you've recently started listening, you probably know that, or if you're new, this is really for you, but these are the stories and the conversations and the chats with the people that I meet in my journey in golf, coaching, teaching, playing golf. These are the fitness instructors, the mental coaches, the performance coaches, the other teachers, the players, and the people that I run into day to day teaching and coaching that I think shed interesting perspectives, have great views and information that can help all of you that love the game of golf play better, coach better, teach better, practice better. It's all in an effort to give you the best information. So hopefully you like these conversations here on the Tour Coach. We appreciate all of you listening and watching. And more importantly, or equally as important, we appreciate our sponsors, Mitch McConnell and Buick GMC, Blaine Stokely, Stokely's Midtown Garden Center, Taylor Martino and Rowan. And none of this would be possible without the folks at Shrixon Golf and Vineyard Vines and Bushnell. They've been with us forever. We're going to be with you, helping you play the game of golf better. Enjoy the Tour Coach podcast. Go find us on YouTube, DewsweeperTV. Follow us, like us, comment. All right, so joining me here on a little Zoom call and a little podcast, Tour Coach podcast, and getting back to the golf coach development for all the young teachers out there. JP and I got busy towards the summer, and we just didn't do a great job, but we're back on it. We're going to get good at this. We've got some good things coming down the road. I know trying to coordinate dates. Hopefully JP could be there. We're going to do a golf teaching summit for young teachers in New York at 5 Iron Golf, working out the details on that. But Jackson, congratulations to you on being named to the best young teachers. And I thought we'd kind of focus this episode edition, if you will, me and JP and you on your development and some of the questions you and the other young teachers out there have. So first of all, how you doing with the back? You've roped this into doing more podcasts laying down than any human being, anybody else.
Pretty good. I like virtual coaching horizontal. It's not bad. But the back's doing better. I mean, the full recovery is going to take a while, right? Mm-hmm. But my stamina is improving by the day. I can walk around a good bit. I officially am able to go back to work next week, which is great. That's 5 weeks earlier than any other fusion surgery would be typically allowed, but that's probably because I teach the surgeon. So
that helps.
A little bit of help there. And I appreciate you bringing up the Golf Digest list, but I mean it when I say it, that every accolade you get is always because of the help that you've had along the way. And obviously, Tony, yourself and the Dewsweeper family has had the biggest influence on my career, but my life as well. And then the person that's joining us as well, Mr. Parsons, I want to thank you as well for all the influence that you've had in my life, whether you know it or not. And obviously it has to do with teaching as well, but I think the examples that you guys put up as coaches is something to aspire to. So thank you both for that.
Well, Jackson, I appreciate that, and congratulations from my side as well. And I, just before we get into it, Tony, and I think you and I might go off, on a couple of personal tangents with this. My good friends in the industry, Tony, Claude Harmon, Dave Phillips, Butch Harmon, Pete Cowan. Every one of those people have had some sort of, I would refer to it as a severe spinal episode through their careers that I've known them. I've navigated my way through that. Tony, you've navigated your way through that. Jackson, as a younger man than we are, you're laid up at the moment. And I do think for the younger teachers out there, we're only effective when we're able to stand on the lesson tee, and it's a scary thing, Jackson. I'm sure as a young father that you're laid up currently, and you're going to navigate your way through all this. But I think it's a lesson for all of us in how we can look after ourselves, how we can look after our lower backs. When you think about what we do, we stand on our feet 8 to 10 hours a day, then we frequently and suddenly bend over and demonstrate, golf swing movements, which is a highly torsional kind of movement in its own way. Anyway, we're not walking between shots like the players are. We're not doing pre-work and post-work. Many of us aren't like the players are, and I think it's a good lesson for those young teachers who are out there, and they're really getting their teeth into their work, and they're trying to do a lot of hours on the lesson tee. You do have to take care of yourself, as boring and as old as I feel whenever I say that. And if you don't, you're going to end up like I did in certain spells in Dubai, and Tony and Claude has had to have back surgery. So it's something you have to take very seriously.
I think in general, not to kind of go down like a touchy-feely subject, but I think in general, like, just taking care of yourself as a person, as a teacher, is tough. And I think it gets tougher with these phones, just, mental health, every part of it, because there's so many demands on you. And admittedly, I've talked to you, JP, and Jackson knows about it. Like, I've not done great jobs at times at like finding time for yourself. And you just gave me life advice before we went on about the hotel I should be staying at. But like,
yeah, Tony, just to fill you guys in, Tony's going to attend one of Butch Harmon's famous golf schools, and he's ended up, well, not name the hotel, but it's one of
they're not going to sponsor this podcast.
and he said that the TV doesn't work, it smells, and he feels slightly he feels less safe than he would like to when he leaves the room. So I said, Tony, I think at this stage in your career, you owe yourself enough to be able to stay somewhere nice and look after yourself. So we've got to take care of ourselves, and certainly the lower back stuff, I think, is something that's kind of near and dear to me, with all the postural stuff that I see and all the strains on the golfers that I train and teach, and all the teachers that I'm close to. And I definitely think it's something that you got to put a little bit of thought into. Get your own personal program, make sure it works for you. Consult some people who you really like. Ask some questions on this forum. Yeah. I can share things that have worked and things that haven't worked. I've had those chairs that tip you upside down. I've tried all sorts of things. And I think there is, certainly at this point in time, there's probably a blueprint of hydration and of work that you can do to make sure you don't, suffer too much like what Jackson's currently going through.
Question for you, JP. I had a young teacher ask this not long ago, and I thought, but as you start getting busy, as you start coming along, how do you figure out, like, what's the right number of players to have? Like, who do you give the most attention to? I had a young teacher ask that, sent a direct message not long ago. I'm embarrassed. I can't remember who it was, but it was like, hey, starting to get busy, got some guys playing. Like, how do you figure that? I think that's one of the harder things. Again, I don't know that I did a great job at it at times. I know I've been probably let go at times because I've had too many people and not done the service I need to. How do you find that balance? And then also, how do you find that balance with just taking care of yourself and your home life too?
I think number one, I think you've got to try and, once you begin to establish yourself, I think you need to figure out what, at this point in your career, what it is you're trying to do and who it is you're trying to service. So are you at a point in your career where, you're teaching at a club, the members of the golf club are your most important clientele? Are you teaching at a driving range and it's a lot of guests and you're having to be a little bit more like thinking on your feet, doing a lot of marketing? Are you starting to work within the sort of the professional sphere, or are you working with college players? I think you've got to quickly figure out what your target audience is, and then make sure that you're devoting your time and your resources into servicing your target audience. I don't think you can be everything to everybody. And that's not to say, like, when I was in my mid to late 20s, I was teaching an awful lot at the driving range. I was teaching 30-minute lessons. I was sometimes given 12 to 15, maybe even 18 golf lessons a day. And I was looking after that clientele, and I was making sure that, I recognized that that's what I needed to do. And whenever I moved to Dubai, I was having to do a little bit more budgeting and having to kind of look after some golf academies and things, and therefore my time was a little bit more stretched. But I would have to make sure that I would look after some of the, let's say, members and VIPs and players who I had relationships with. And then as the tour stuff started to happen, that's something I really enjoy. And again, that's like I've met fantastic teachers who don't want to teach on tour very much. They don't really enjoy the travel. They don't really enjoy some of the obstacles that players put in front of them, and they just want to work with players who are maybe a little bit more simple to communicate with. And again, if you decide that that's not for you, there's nothing wrong with that. Just in the same way that if you're a good player, and you decide you don't want to be a tour player because you don't want to travel all your life and you want to have a more stable existence, there's nothing wrong with that as well. But I think people get themselves into trouble, Tony, when they try and pursue too many avenues, and they try and that can also confuse an employer. If your employer wants you to be on the lesson tee at your golf club for 50 hours a week, and then you end up starting to go to college tournaments, and they're going, well, you're taking days off, and you're thinking, well, I'm not really taking a day off, I'm going to teach at a college tournament. And they're saying, well, that's not what we're paying you for. That's where the water can get a little bit muddy. Your second question in relation to taking care of yourself and things, I still do my exercise. I still work out a bit. I'm not sleeping as good as I should do. I travel too much. I'm in and out of different time zones. I think it's
other than that, you're doing great.
You and I are always talking about that, how to try and take care of ourselves better. And it's as you get older, you prioritize that. You see your kids coming out and getting older, and you realize you want to be around for them as long as possible. So, again, for the young ones out there, just try and balance as best you can, work as hard as you can within balance, and try and make sure you prioritize where it is you are in your career, do the best job you can at that particular segment. And then if you decide you want to move into a new segment, go ahead and do that, and don't try and be everything to everybody.
The only thing I'd add is that you talked about the, not doing too many things. I think too, like if you figure out what you're good at, like what's your strength, like you're obviously amazing with tour players and the best there is. And, I've kind of, as I've gotten older and you start trying to figure out where you want to be and what you want to do, I've realized that I think the thing that brings me the most enjoyment and joy is developing young players, college players, high school players, and young professionals. And I think that trying to do that and trying to run around and maybe not necessarily chase or teach older players, it's hard to do all. And I think finding not just what you're good at helps you professionally, but also I think if you focus on the part that you enjoy the most, you'll have more success and you'll also have more enjoyment.
Agreed. And the thing that people look at what I do and they think it's very, it's great and it's glamorous and things like that. And then all of a sudden you got to realize, you're in a Delta lounge at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you're on a driving range in Los Angeles at 11 o'clock, and you're looking at your watch thinking, I'm starting to get tired here. And you got a player coming in 5 hours and he's in a bad mood. And, then you're experiencing, then the hotel room's trashy. And, so I think we're all guilty of thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. And I enjoy the journey with players. I enjoy getting the most out of players. And, I enjoy trying to get to the bottom of exactly what makes people tick. And I think we probably get the opportunity to do that on tour more than we would do teaching regular golfers.
Yeah.
Certainly that's kind of what makes me tick. And I appreciate and I understand, Tony, and I admire the fact that you're such a great mentor to these young players. These guys who come up, they've all got really nice, efficient golf swings that I see that you are able to put together, and you're able to keep them moving in the right direction. And you've got a proven track record in something you enjoy. And I do, when I listen to podcasts when I'm on the road and things like that, I think that's one of the keys to life is to, figure out what you enjoy doing. And if you can get paid to do what you enjoy doing, you're probably ahead of the curve.
And again, I've enjoyed this journey we've been on, helping other young coaches we have a lot of young coaches listen to this podcast and be part of the Golf Coach Development. We also have a lot of young players or guys starting out. I mean, those seem to be our demographic. Neither of those bring in tremendous revenue from advertising, but anyways, but I think, finding what you're good at and what you enjoy is just is such a huge part of it. Another question, I'm being Jackson today. I'm firing the questions, but I had this question posed to me, and then it made me think of my upbringing and as well as what you have at Sea Island. A young teacher asked, do you think it's better? Is it better to go work at a place where there's a bunch of other great teachers and you kind of start at the bottom? Or is it, and be around that, or is it better to just go out on your own, buy some tech, get you a good place, own your own business, and just try to figure it out? Curious on your thoughts. I think like just as a player, like great, and I'd love your thoughts on this as well, because you've been all around the world. But like, I think you see pockets where there's just like players where there's a bunch of real good players. There seems to be, like, if you have one good player, you generally have 2, 3, or 4 kind of come up together. And I think that with instruction can be similar. If you're around people that are really good at their craft, it doesn't mean you've got to do everything they do or teach how they teach. But I think, to me, working for Hank and for Wayne, and then the people that have taken me under their wing all along, has been a huge help. And I'm 100% certain I'd be living in a gutter somewhere if I'd have tried to figure this shit out on my own.
That's right. Well, I would say, the Harmon family for me have been incredible mentors. And if I hadn't demonstrated to them that I wanted to be my own individual version of myself and not just the Harmon version of me, I don't think I would ever have gotten as close or gotten as much access to them. So it's like, I think within that then lies the fact that I think it's very, very good to go and seek out opinions and look at the way really good teachers present themselves and listen to how they deliver golf lessons. I think it would, in a sweet spot would probably be that as you're coming out of your, so let's say you're going into the late stages of your training, you're around some really, really good teachers so you can see what's going on with them, or some really good players. And then maybe you branch out on your own for a couple of years, and then you would maybe go into seeing how great teachers are again. And then after, you hit your, let's say, your full adulthood in your late 20s and into your 30s, then you can really kind of assimilate the kind of person and the kind of teacher that you are. And then, that's certainly, I was fortunate to move out to Dubai in my late 20s. I was around some great teachers in Dubai: Wayne Johnson, Mark Gregson Walters. Wayne trained with Butch, Mark with Pete Cowan. Great mentors to me. When we opened the golf school, I was around Claude a lot. I was around Claude and.
Did we lose you, JP?
Yeah, we did.
How the heck did we lose JP? He was in the middle of a great story. He'll zoom back in here shortly. So, Jackson, I'm going to turn it to you. So, you obviously worked for us for a while, and now you're on your own. Talk about the transition. Talk about your transition, from working part of our group to going on your own, and how has what you learned before helped you versus how is what you do it now on your own. Well, if you're going to disappear, I'm going to ask Jackson a question. So he's getting ready to, then we'll go back to you.
Okay.
Well, honestly, I think what's helped in each stage or transition was I wasn't ready. So, and I knew it. So I had to learn on my feet quickly, but I had you guys as a huge resource. So I think for people that are maybe in that transition or maybe looking to take that next step, obviously it's a little bit easier now with technology and people are willing to help. I don't know if I wasn't tied to you guys, if I would have been open or vulnerable enough to reach out to people. So I'd encourage, if anybody does feel like that, like, we're more than happy to help in any way. And also it's huge to have a club or an atmosphere or a culture around you that can support that as well. Because I feel like the first several years I worked, for some reason, I felt a little bit isolated as an instructor at the club. But again, I had you, I had Wayne, I had Woody, I had all these people that I could go back and learn from. And I had a stable family life outside of that. My wife has been incredibly supportive through each transition. So, but yeah, I think the hunger to be good, but also being in a situation where I knew I wasn't ready. Like when I moved down to Alabama to run the academy for you in Fairhope, I wasn't ready. When we moved to Frederica and I was there doing the day-to-day stuff, I wasn't ready for that either. And then that really prepared me for this.
There is a
job
common
in Jackson.
theme. I've been kicked out of every place you've gone.
But I feel like, touching back on what JP was saying, you know, and once you get to that stage in your career, I finally felt ready to take on a role at Atlantic Beach by myself.
Yep.
So, yeah, having that team approach is huge, and then having a culture from the club around you is massive as well, because that's the balance between life outside of work and life at work.
JP.
Sorry about that. I got a call, and I flubbed the technology, as I often do. You know, I agree with that. I think there's a blend in there. I think that's the key. You have to create your own individuality. I think people see through you if you're just trying to be someone else.
Right.
But if you can combine that desire to be the best version of yourself with an ability to extract great things from great people and great mentors, then, you know, hopefully you can get to where you are literally the best version of yourself. And I know I wouldn't be sitting in this office without the Harmon family and without Wally Uline and without the TPI guys and all the people in Dubai that helped me. But you know, I hopefully haven't lost my Northern Irish accent completely and haven't lost a bit of banter along the way. So you got to be sort of true to yourself, and I think then you can get the most out of it.
Go through the list of the people you named. Give me one thing for the teachers and the players, the people listening, that you took from each of them. Like one important thing. Like what was one of the biggest things you took from your years in your relationship and mentoring from Butch, and then from Claude, and then from Pete? Like, what are some of the things you took from those?
I would say from Butch, master communicator, just the best communicator that I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. From Claude, an attention to detail and an ability to present yourself and present the facility and dress things in a way that people would walk in and think they're in a 5-star hotel. From the TPI guys, just a forward thinking and an ability to look in places that we weren't really looking at. You know, they're looking at, well, somebody's putting badly. Well, have you tested their eyes? You know, they're looking at things in a very holistic type of way, which I think is really valuable. I think with Pete Cowan, I think specialized short game, best short game teacher that I've ever come across. Coupled with, you know, the work that he did with Ramsey McMaster and some of the TPI family on, you know, some of the intricacies of the golf swing and the complexities of the golf swing, and I think, you know, that sort of blend, you know, when you combine that with you know, with some of the people that I met through Troon Golf and the people in Dubai, where they were able to actually demonstrate how to run a golf business, you know, how a golf business actually works. You know, I think all of those things were certainly special. And then when you meet somebody like Jack Lumpkin, who I was fortunate to spend, you know, 3 or 4 years here with him whenever, you know, he was getting towards the end of his life, and Brian Harmon and I were so thrilled to have access to him. I was thrilled. I mean, Brian's had access to him since he was 11, but you know, to see, you know, the old values of golf instruction and the way it would be delivered, and his passion for it still at 86 years old was pretty cool for me to see.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Jackson, any questions?
Can you talk a little bit about your work with Patton? Obviously.
Oh yeah.
Congrats on another victory. But just a little bit of insight there into maybe what you guys have done, what his specialty is, and maybe what led to him breaking through and getting another win.
By the way, one of the nicest all-time people, Pat.
The best. He would gladly do a podcast like this to help young players or young teachers. He's very passionate about that. I haven't really deviated too much from the golf swing stuff. That's not true, actually. That's probably not fair. I have deviated a little bit, but I think my overall theme with this golf swing hasn't changed from when we started in 2019, 2020 to get him postured up to a better get him standing closer to the golf ball, eliminate early extension, try and get him in control of his pivot on the way back, and not let his golf swing get too long. He navigated his way through the real adult side of life. He was married, just pretty much married when I'd met him. He's had 2 children since I've been working for him. And he recently started with a mental coach who's basically been able to help him become the CEO of his own company. And as he's done that, and that's, I'll probably not go into too much more detail than that, but as he's become the CEO of his own company, he's begun to develop his confidence in, everything that he's doing, whether it's his own behavior on the golf course, to how does he use his swing instructor, to, how he's prioritizing his time, how he's using his time, all of those things. So again, I think it's a lesson there for the young teachers that, what we do with the tour players, and Tony, I'm sure you can chime in on this, has got a lot more to do with, their backswings or how they, change direction, and there's so much more to their lives, and we're basically helping them to become the best versions of themselves so that they can be the best versions of themselves on the golf course.
I think that whether you're a teacher and you're a young teacher and you're coming up, or you're a young player and you're trying to become really good, I think learning that you're the CEO of your own company, whether it's your teaching or it's your or as a player, I think is one of the biggest lessons you can learn. Because I've seen and I think it gets worse and worse for players nowadays. I think the more money there is out there, and the more people that want to be on that scene, as soon as they have access to being out there playing professionally, everybody's trying to get a piece of them. And I think them learning to understand, like, that those people work for them and that they should be in charge of their game is a valuable lesson. I think players get off track early in their careers at times because they aren't very good at that, or they listen to the wrong people, or they let people have control of stuff that they don't necessarily need to have control. I think that's a huge, and I would think that the majority of players could benefit from having somebody like this lady you talked about. Dr. Carton's a buddy of mine that I've used a lot, like somebody like that they can talk to, that can help them figure that stuff out. Because I don't know that playing junior golf, professional college golf necessarily prepares you for that aspect of life.
Yeah, being an adult,
right? They've never had to do it. Never had to do it.
That's true, and I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I've obviously not done tremendously well with that at times. Come on, Jackson, you got anything else?
What are your favorite stats programs, JP? And Tony, are you going to see Butch and you got your Saints hat on?
I'm gonna switch to an old Palm hat.
Oh, I was gonna say that would be incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't care. This is the half day today. I couldn't make it for the whole day for the long version yesterday, which killed me to not do it. But I have buddies coming into Vegas tomorrow. There's zero chance I would survive 5 days in Vegas.
No.
Zero. Neither my wallet, nor my liver, nor any part of it. Jackson and JP be getting like an SOS text in the middle of this Luxor hotel somewhere, and you'd be sending in the team to get me, pull me out.
Jackson, to be honest, I do most of my stuff through the PGA Tour website and through Data Golf with the players that I'm helping. We've used Clipped quite a lot, which is very beneficial, very, very thorough. I think the decade stuff's excellent. I think it can help to really give you a good understanding as how to play the game. There's obviously, this is a game of many, many imperfections, and as you embrace those imperfections, you don't want to get to a point where you're so conservative that you're not getting the most out of your game, but you've got to get to a point where you appreciate the fact that this is a game of imperfections. And so for me, it's most of my deep dives I'll do myself into the PGA Tour data and into Data Golf, and then we would have people who are much, much better than me, Quartzy and a bunch of guys really now on the tour sort of side who will who will furnish us with some course reports and some different pieces of information. So that's a thriving part of our industry. As we're with the tech and the stuff, I think we're getting more and more accurate. I know that some of the PGA Tour stuff, sometimes I see the volunteers and they're not quite sure who Harris English or Patton Kazar is. So I wonder sometimes whether we're getting exactly the right data. But we do our best to watch, keep an eye on it, and furnish the guys with some reports and some ideas as to how to get better.
How important do you think, and how much? I follow your Instagram a lot, so you have a lot of good young players, obviously, rightfully so. But how important do you think using stats and getting data like that is for the younger player coming up, like the high school, the good junior, the good high school player, the good college player, and if so, like, when do you start introducing that, and involving that in your development coaching?
Well, I think I would say if your golf effectively is your stroke average, and if we equated your stroke average to your health, you really should be going for a fairly regular bit of blood work. You should be getting your health kind of monitored as you go through a year, so that you can figure out, okay, well, the blood pressure's not right here, or I'm allergic to this, and I'm not. So all of those little impacts on your overall health, you have to keep on track with those. Otherwise, your health's going to deteriorate. And I think if the scoring average is really the health of your golf game, to be able to monitor the overall health of your golf game, you've got to kind of know, well, am I any good from 125 to 150, or is my sand stuff down a little bit? And right. I think if you can think of it that way, because I think we're so guilty, I think, in our modern world, with all of this data and all these stats and all these statistics, for thinking that everything is the be all and end all. Like, if you're not working on ground forces, you're not doing your job. Or if you're not going to TrackMan, you're not doing your job. All of these things are to help to monitor and help to improve the overall health of your golf game. So if you're not looking at your statistical data, if you're playing enough golf, you're playing competitive golf on a very regular basis, and you don't have some insight into the statistical analysis linked into the overall health of your score, how are you going to make the requisite improvements in your practice planning in order to be able to get better? So, and again, I think with that in mind, I think if you're very statistically minded, like somebody like Matthew Fitzpatrick, you can pretty much design your practice programs around your statistics. And I think even if you ignored mechanics and some other elements of the instructional part of it, I still think you'll probably get better, because you are monitoring the health of your golf game and you're making little adjustments as you go along based on what it is that you're doing.
That's great. That's along the lines of what I just encourage them when they're starting to do so. Like, I get some kids that are maybe little less developed than you when they start with me. Some of the kids that are coming to you and they want to be good, and as they start getting good, like, you've got to use something. Like, I'm always like, I don't care necessarily which one of those, so many of those good programs, but as we're working and going along, I mean, you've got to have some way to really know, because there's no way for me and you to go to every junior golf tournament and really see them play like you do with Harm and Harris and those guys, Pat. So, if we don't have something like that, there's no real way to know, to know what's going on. I mean, because every parent, every kid comes to you, or every college player wants to hit it better. But then sometimes you find out that these things, that they hit it pretty dang good, they suck with a wedge, or not very good at chipping or putting or what have you. So,
and going back, again, for the younger teachers, Tony, going back to the fact that, even out on tour, we've got guys who are coaches, like, let's say, holistic coaches who look in different areas, and they probably get some reasonable skills and certain. And then you've got guys who are just mechanics. You've got guys who are just swing instructors, and then you've got guys who are just putting instructors, and you've got guys who are just short game instructors. So even in our world, there are those little subdivisions of things. So, again, if you're a young teacher out there and you've got a real interest in the swing, and you've got a real passionate about making players swing the golf club better, and that's what you love, you know, you can make that clear that that's where you want to go. And conversely, if you're somebody who's very statistically kind of orientated and that's something you love to do, that's maybe the direction that you want to start to go in. And
Right.
I don't think, like, I was never any good. Like, before I moved to Dubai and had to do budgets, I hated numbers and statistics and things like that. And I've gotten a little bit better at it over the years, but you know, when I'm around, you know, guys like Courtsy and when I'm listening to the guys from Decade and the Clip guys, like, I'm still miles behind that. But again, you have to keep your eyes open, and you know, be an expert in the areas that you're really passionate about, and then you can, like Jackson said, then you can lean on some people to help you in the areas that you're maybe less able for.
That's what I've tried to do. I've tried to, as I was coming up and I started teaching better players, I knew there were areas I was deficient in, that I wasn't as good as I needed to be.
Yeah, you said that.
And I tried to surround myself with people that I, you know, that supplemented that and make them part of a team, or where you had resources. And I mean, I know tons of people that do that, but I think that that's going along the lines of what you just said. If you're a teacher and you're really good at one thing and that's your passion, I mean, figure out how to make that your business, how to make that what you do, and surround yourself with people that are good at the other parts that it takes to, you know, to make people play well. Jackson,
How much time we got? Can I fire one more question?
Yeah, you fire away.
If you had to change the playoffs and the Tour Championship, what would it look like?
Tony?
Man, I guess, you know, I just think the way they're doing it now is dumb. Like the whole, you know, like, I know we're trying to create interest in the Tour Championship. I guess that's the whole reason for doing it. But like, if you're Scotty Scheffler and you're Xander last year, like, when it got to the Tour Championship, there shouldn't have been any other two people that probably could have won the Tour Championship last year. I mean, just based on how good they played all year. You know, I mean, I don't know the fix to it. I mean, I think you're trying to fix something. They're trying to make the Tour Championship sellable for TV, so they've got to find a way to make it where anybody in the field can win. And if it's really a season-long deal, the odds that everybody can win on the last event of the year probably aren't. That's not real feasible. I mean, the last week of the NFL season, not every team can make the playoffs, you know, or every team could win the Super Bowl. So, you know, that's my thoughts. But I mean, I don't know. I don't like the format, but I also would agree with, like, a lot of people have said, like, I don't know what the fix is either. JP, I know you don't want to answer this.
Well,
anytime you throw me the question, it's because you don't want to answer.
No, I think, you know, I think it's always difficult for me to be brutally honest within this topic, because I see players at different elements of their different times in their career and different places in the rankings and things. So for me, you know, I've got to lift myself above that and say, there are too many people playing golf on the PGA Tour to begin with. So they got to figure out what the number is. So and let's just say the number's 100. There should be 100 cards. So that starts to make life very simple. If we had 100 players who had their PGA Tour cards, and we were then being able to put on, let's say, 15 fantastic events, 15 to 18 fantastic events for those 100 players, where they're playing for a lot of money and they're playing for a lot of privilege. And to your point, coming to the end of the season, as that number potentially whittles down to maybe a 16-man match play tournament at the end of the year to become, you know, that would be something that I think would be captivating for people to literally see it whittle down a little bit more. And you know, within that, then I think about, you know, players who are in the, you know, in the 101 to 125 category that I know when I teach some of them, fantastic players. And in the system that I'm saying, well, they wouldn't have playing opportunities. And one of the PGA Tour's mantras is to create playing opportunities for their members. So, you know, it's a difficult thing. Like, because we're within the industry, we probably know who the 100th best player in the world is. We don't know who the 100th best tennis player in the world is, and I'm sure he or she are fantastic tennis players. But within this business, I do think for it to be captivating, it needs to be a little bit more cutthroat, a little bit more structured. Whenever I hear myself saying that, if I had Brian Harmon in my ear, he would say, "Well, how about the guy who's he's a 27-year-old player and he's 140th on the money list and he's about to have the best 3 years of his life." It basically means that you eradicate a fairy tale story from the tour. And when I listen to what Davis Love said, he always likes to think that almost at the start of every year, it's just like it's a reset and everyone has to be playing for their privilege, playing for their rights, and nothing should be given to you. And I think there's an element of that we should have as well. And at the moment, it feels like to me there's probably too many players, and the good players are almost given too much. So that we pretty much keep what we think people want to see right where we want them to be, and we keep extending the playing field all the way out to a point where it's harder and harder for people to get into these elevated events. It's harder and harder for people to fall out of it. And to your point, Tony, the structure probably seems a little bit less agile.
Yeah, I was speaking on just that structure of the Tour Championship. I agree with you 100% on, and obviously I've taught mostly, with the exception of a lot of those guys that are young coming up and that would be the great stories or would be the guys trying to get into the top 125. But it's a mess. I mean, there's too many people with playing privileges, and it's hard to, it's a little better on the Korn Ferry Tour making a living, but it's not great. And and I do think that the guys at the very top could play really bad for a really good while before they ever fell out of being in those things. And I think it didn't used to be that way, and I think I think it needs to go back to more that way, to where you are each year, even for the top guys, has a little more meaning, and how you get going and how, and how you play affects what you're going to be able to play in.
It'd be funny if you had the Monday qualify every week.
No, it would be, huh?
No matter who you were.
I'd like to see them go back to the old tour school days where they just, however many tour cards there were out, you gave the tour cards to Q school. And they can earn play.
It's interesting, when we've been around golf and professional golf for a long time. We were never PGA Tour players, and when you hear us two, talking about this, it's clear how complex this situation is, and it's clear how little we really know about it. And it's interesting that if you asked a journeyman player, he would have his way of thinking about it. If you asked a really well-established player, or if you asked a top 10 player in the world, they would all have their different opinions based on where they are. So, I'm not meaning to nullify the complexity of the situation. I do think it's a complex situation. I think that's where the tour need great leadership, and they need someone to say, "Hey guys, this is what we're doing, and this is the way it is."
Yeah, agree. Guys, I'm going to go change hats and head out.
Beautiful.
To Harmon School of Golf for half a day, and then I guess I'll wander around here. But guys, Jackson, keep getting better. Looking forward to having you back teaching next week. JP, thanks for all the help and advice over the years, and for sitting in again. We'll do this again soon. We're going to get back on this. Appreciate you guys.
Good luck, Jackson. See you.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks.